Hello again. With this session, let's go through how to configure interfaces and IP addresses on the Big IP appliance. Interfaces on Big IP appliance are numbered in a way not similar to the routers and switches. If you are used to work with routers and switches, you can see the interfaces numbered 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and so on and so forth. This is a virtual appliance again, so we have only 3 data interfaces plus the management interface. The management interface is not showing here because when you click on network menu, interfaces submenu, then you select interface list, it shows the data interfaces here. It's not showing the management interface as a part of the data interfaces. Always look at this path here. It will show you how to navigate to land on this page. So to see the interface list, you go click on network interfaces, then you select interface list. Now you see 1.1 here, it's showing as a hyperlink. If you click on that, you get the physical properties of the interface. You get the MAC address. Of course, you can see the MAC address from the list here, but you can get here also the MAC address, the state of the interface is enabled, the speed of the interface, 1 gig, 10 gig, 40, 100, whatever, flow control and LLDP properties, and the forwarding mode. With Big IP, for a data interface, we have 2 forwarding modes that we can pick. The default is the forwarding, which means this interface will be used for data forwarding, for data routing, traffic coming in, traffic going out, server to user, user to server, etc. However, in certain scenarios, we may need to configure a switch to send copy of the traffic to Big IP before maybe we deploy the Big IP in production. We want to see a report about the traffic passing through our switch. So I can connect the interface 1.1 to the switch and configure the switch with a span session, send copy of traffic to the Big IP, and configure the Big IP interface as a passive, so it will only receive traffic. It's not expected to send traffic. It's not expected to establish a session with the server or with the user. No. Interface 1.1 here, when we configure it as a passive, it will only receive copy of the traffic from the switch. That is useful, as I said, when we want only to get copy of the traffic, to do analytics on the traffic, to analyze the traffic and do some reporting. Statistics for the interface can be shown from the menu statistics. There is submenu module statistics, then we click on network. Then we have to select the statistics type to be interfaces, so it will show us the statistics for the interfaces. Now, as you can see in this scenario, we don't have any statistics for the interfaces yet. We have statistics for the management interface here, but for the data interfaces yet we don't have any statistics. To configure an IP address on the Big IP, we need to involve 3 elements actually. It's not as straightforward as router or switch, where you go interface and do IP address command. No. On a Big IP, we need to create a VLAN. We cannot attach an IP address directly to physical interface. No. We attach an IP address to VLAN, and then we attach VLAN to physical interface. So the first step is usually creating a VLAN. So for example, we are creating a new VLAN here. To create new VLAN, we click on network menu, VLANs sub menu, and click on VLAN list. Then there is a new button, we click on new. This is how to navigate to this page. We'll see it in the lab in action. So in this example, let's name the VLAN outside. So we want to create we want to configure the outside interface, user-facing interface. So we're creating a VLAN for that, call it outside. Then to which physical interface you want to attach this outside VLAN? We want to attach it to interface 1.1. So you select from the menu here 1.1, select untagged and click add. So it is showing in the list now. The interface attached to the VLAN outside is 1.1. Please note that the tag, the VLAN ID, is not specified here. We will come back to this when we do trunking, but for now, in a normal situation, we don't specify the tag or the VLAN ID. So we give the VLAN a name, we select the physical interface as an untagged, click add, and then click finish. Now we have done the right part here. We have created VLAN, we attach the VLAN to the physical interface. Next, we need to create another object called self IP. So the IP address as an IP address within the big IP terminology is called self IP. So we create self IP object and we attach it to the VLAN. Let's see how. To create self IP, click on the network menu, click on self IPs submenu, then click new. You see this plus sign here, you can click on it, it will open the new self IP. Now what are we going to name the new self IP? So it's good to be matching the VLAN, so it will be easy for you to identify later on which self IP is attached to which VLAN. So we are calling it here outside. You can call it outside self IP or outside SIP. What is the IP address? 10.1.1.1, for example. You can put any IP address you want, the net mask, and this is where you attach the self IP to the VLAN. So in the previous step, we created the outside VLAN. Now we are creating self IP and attaching this outside VLAN to this self IP. So now we have self IP attached to VLAN, and this VLAN in the previous step we got it attached to physical interface 1.1. This is how we attach this IP address with interface 1.1 physically. Port lockdown. This is actually a good security practice to specify on this IP address 10.1.1.1, which is going to be our outside IP address for our big IP, what type of control traffic you want to allow. We're talking about control traffic here. We are not talking about traffic going through the big IP. We are talking about traffic destined to the big IP itself. The destination is 10.1.1.1. Let me try to do a small drawing here just to explain the concept. So here we're talking about the big IP appliance. We are going to have outside interface and inside. So let's say this is the outside interface that we just configured. So usually it is connected to an outside switch. Then somehow we have users getting to the servers behind the big IP. So this is the interface where we configured 10.1.1.1, for example. Now port lockdown will not affect traffic going from users to servers and response back. No. Port lockdown actually is concerned about one user here is trying to talk to the 10.1.1.1, maybe trying to do SSH on 10.1.1.1. Do we want to allow SSH on this IP or not? Maybe trying to manage the big IP. If you go to the browser, put https 10.1.1.1, you're trying to open a management session to the big IP. So do you want to allow the big IP to be managed on this IP address? Do you want to allow SSH traffic to flow on this IP address? Maybe SNMP. If, for example, your SNMP manager, usually you have a server NMS or SNMP manager server, if your SNMP server happen to be on the outside of the big IP, then maybe you will have to allow this server to talk to this IP address using SNMP. We have to be very careful here. So let's say, for example, 10.1.2.3 is the IP address of my SNMP manager. Yes, I will allow SNMP on the outside interface, but I will restrict it to be sourced only from this IP. It's very important to be very specific, especially when you are hardening the outside interface. Usually the outside interface is internet facing interface. So we need to be very careful when we configure the port lockdown on the outside interface. Ideally, allow nothing. We allow nothing on the outside interface. None of the control protocol should be allowed on the outside interface unless very, very, very necessary. Now on the inside interface or other interface, it's subject to the requirement, whether you need it or not. So what are the options that we can configure on the port lockdown? You can say allow all, means allow everything. Allow none, allow nothing. Allow default. This is the list of the default ports that will be opened when you say allow default. HTTPS, SNMP, SSH, DNS, TCP and UDP, routing protocols, iQuery, which is management from the big IP central manager. There is a central management appliance for big IP devices. So these are the default that will be allowed if you select allow default. You can use a command line to list them as well. So by the time we are doing this recording, this is the list on F5 documentation. You can always check what is configured on your appliance using this command. Allow custom means you specify. Maybe you don't want all this list. You don't want SSH and DNS and RIP. you only want OSPF, for example. So you can specify OSPF. You don't want IGMP. You don't want PIM. So you can say allow custom. Now maybe you want all the default ones plus you have another port you want to open. So you can say allow custom include default. So allow the default and give me the option to add one more port or one or more ports to the default. Now, of course, you can say allow custom and you manually allow them, but it's easier for you to say allow custom, include default, and I will add few more ports. If your requirement state that you need all these plus additional ports, then select allow custom include default.